Their first question was, if you are a venture funded company, we know how it works. We know you are going to give us something for a nice package and then you're going to jack up the price and then you're going to remove the features. No, this is what you get. This is our model of innovation. We are actually a very stable Canadian-owned company.
Welcome to Canada Now. I'm Ashley Smith, and every week we dig into the bold ideas, real stories, and fresh perspectives shaping Canada's future. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Canada Now, the show where we explore the ideas, builders, and systems shaping Canada's next chapter and future economy. I'm your host, Ashley Smith. And today's episode is a little different. Instead of a typical guest interview, this is part 2 of a short reflection on the first season of the show. In part 1, I stepped back and talked about something I kept noticing while recording these episodes. A kind of Canadian operating style. Less hype, less noise, often more focus on long-term thinking. But that observation raised a bigger question. If that's true, what does it actually lead to? Because after 16 conversations with founders, operators, technologists, and ecosystem builders, a few themes kept appearing again and again. Trust, community, the way Canadian founders tend to build companies, and the systems that either help those companies grow or quietly slow them down. So today, I want to zoom out and connect some of those ideas. Not just to recap the season, but to explore what these voices might tell us about Canada's moment right now and where it could go next. And the first theme that kept surfacing was trust. Across very different industries and areas of expertise, leaders kept coming back to the same challenge. Trust is becoming harder to earn and easier to lose.
The AI slop is almost becoming those commercials we want to fast forward through because it doesn't feel real. It's like, what are you going to sell me? It's just too perfect. It's too much.
When I spoke with brand strategist and agency founder Brady Dahmer in episode 10, for example, he summed it up with a line that really stuck with me. He said, people trust people more than they trust brands. That might sound obvious, but it reflects something deeper happening right now. People want to know who is behind the product, where the idea came from, who actually built it, whether the messaging reflects a real philosophy or just good marketing. Customers aren't just evaluating products anymore. They're evaluating intent. Companies can still polish their messaging. They can still build beautiful websites. But if the story behind the brand feels superficial or disconnected from reality, trust disappears very quickly. A completely different version of this idea came up when I spoke with cybersecurity expert Dominic Vogel in episode 8. Dominic works with organizations trying to defend themselves against increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. And he framed cybersecurity in a way many leaders don't fully appreciate. He said, cybersecurity is fundamentally a trust problem. Because when a breach happens, the damage isn't solely financial. Customers lose confidence, partners hesitate, and insurance companies ask tough questions. Suddenly, the entire ecosystem around a company starts reassessing risk.
With B2B organizations and those that are selling into a larger ecosystem. What we're seeing is the global supply chain risk management, and bigger companies are clamping down on supply chain risk and vendor risk management. And so they're wanting to make sure that the vendors that they rely on are fulfilling certain security requirements, right? And they didn't used to do that before.
So cybersecurity today isn't just about protecting systems. It's about demonstrating that your organization handles responsibility well and thoughtfully. That same theme showed up again when I spoke with tech entrepreneur and AI advisor Karen Olsson in episode 11.
What does responsible AI look like? The businesses that are going to be successful are the ones that are on board with paying attention to those things. In this day and age, you can't be a leader in a company, particularly in a tech company, and not be paying attention to AI governance.
Karen put it this way. AI isn't just a technology shift. It's a leadership test. Because companies now have to decide how transparent they'll be about the systems they're deploying, how responsibly they will handle data, and whether the people affected by these technologies actually trust the decisions being made. Taken together, these conversations point to something important. Trust is quickly becoming one of the most valuable and fragile currencies in the modern economy. But there is another layer to that. Trust rarely exists on its own. It tends to grow inside relationships, inside networks, inside communities. Which brings us to the second theme that kept appearing throughout the season: community. Community showed up in places I did not necessarily expect: in loyalty programs, in startup ecosystems, in social platforms, and even in conversations around housing and cities. When I spoke with Ethos founder Matias Marquez in episode 15, he challenged the way most companies think about loyalty. Traditionally, loyalty programs revolve around points, rewards, discounts, but Matias argued that those tools mostly create transactional relationships. That made a lot of sense to me. Real loyalty, he said, comes from something deeper: belonging.
We have brands that will be considering a new hat. In the loyalty program, they'll offer up a poll that the member gets points for, where it's like, hey, do you think we should make the blue hat or the green hat? What we're seeing is, yes, people participate because they get points for the participation, but that's not actually what drives them. Just their participation makes them feel closer to the brand. And they love seeing that their participation led to the brand actually creating that hat. You layer on things like early access. So now because you participated in the poll or the survey, you get access to the product first. You can build this beautiful arc and this beautiful journey that you can really just think of it as community.
And companies are starting to experiment with how that looks in practice. Private communities, founder-led events, customer advisory groups. Those initiatives shift the relationship. Customers and potential customers stop feeling like users, and they start to feel more like participants. That same idea came up in my conversation with William Johnson in episode 16. He's the founder of Vancouver Tech Journal and a very close observer of Canada's startup ecosystem. William said something incredibly simple but powerful. Community is the moat, not just for companies, for ecosystems. Because when you look at places where innovation thrives, one of the biggest common threads isn't just capital, it's relationships.
The real connection and the real value is made whenever we do these 12-person events with just 12 founders or CEOs, and they get to spend 90 minutes around a table actually asking each other, hey, what are you actually struggling with right now? Is there someone at this table who can help you with that?
Those kinds of gatherings often create more real value than large conferences or online networks. But the biggest point was really getting offline and getting out into the real world. And interestingly, this theme also surfaced as a gap. Despite efforts from some really wonderful Canadian organizations putting opportunities forward for people to convene, when I spoke with real estate tech founder Fortey in episode 5, she talked about how hard it can be for founders in cities like Vancouver even to find strong accelerator programs or deeply connected founder networks. She's now actively working to change that. And though we didn't really touch on it in the episode, Laura has actually since started hosting founder gatherings and supporting women entrepreneurs through new initiatives. I actually attended one of those events recently this month, International Women's Month, and it was exactly the kind of environment that builds and strengthens ecosystems. Rooms full of entrepreneurs, meeting each other for the first time, sharing ideas, building relationships that could shape and grow future companies. The idea of rebuilding local connections also appeared when I spoke with Jess Glowacki in episode 3, who's building a social platform designed to reconnect people with their local communities here in Canada. Jess, founder of A Social, believes social media drifted too far towards algorithms and attention. Her goal is to bring it back to something much more simple, helping people connect with their neighbors, discover local events and businesses, and strengthen real-world relationships. When you zoom out, a shift becomes visible. For years, the tech world has been obsessed with scale, but many of the founders I spoke with are thinking about something slightly different. Not just scale, but connection. Not just users, communities. And when strong communities form, they often become the foundation for entire ecosystems. But ecosystems raise another question. Once you have talent, ideas, and networks, how do those ideas actually grow? That question surfaced repeatedly during the season. If Canada has strong founders and strong ideas, why do we sometimes struggle to scale them? Is it just our size? One fascinating perspective came from Tom Rossiter when I spoke with him in episode 9.
We took recess
public, not just pre-revenue, but really pre-product. It was a good idea. We had a prototype. It wasn't bulletproof. It wasn't scale. It wasn't enterprise ready at all. We were able to do that in Canada because in Canada, there's a lot more of a venture mindset when it comes to public companies. I think in the US, the mindset of going public is big IPO. At that point, you're worth a considerable amount of money, big market cap, big fanfare. And I think because we're in Canada, we were able to take a company that was really, really early stage, public in a successful manner.
Tom built Recess into a global real estate technology network, operating in more than 160 countries. But his path was unusual. Recess went public on the TSX Venture Exchange before the product was fully built. Tom explained that this route gave him something venture capital might not have been able to offer him at the time. Access. Access to capital, access to visibility, access to investors who believed in the idea early. Of course, it also meant answering to shareholders, but it allowed the company to grow quickly and pursue global expansion from Canada. A different perspective came from climate tech founder Arman Mottaghi in episode 12. Arman described what he sees as a distinctly Canadian style of building companies. Less hype, more discipline, more focus on revenue and long-term sustainability. As he put it, cash flow matters. Building something real matters.
I'm gonna focus on a bootstrap company. And the knock-on effect of that is that your employees, you can give them shares of the company. You can have an employee-owned business so that people are working harder and they know that their shares are not going to get diluted to nothing. You can focus on what matters to you, not what your investors tell you.
When I spoke with real estate industry CEO Jeff King in episode 4, he made a similar point. Canadians sometimes see their caution as a weakness, but thoughtful decision-making can actually be a strength, especially during periods of massive technological change. Jeff captured it perfectly. Sometimes disruption starts with disrupting yourself. That mindset becomes very tangible when you look at Rohe Homes, the modular housing company founded by Rohan Kulkarni and Salek Khan, who joined me in episode 6. They're applying manufacturing principles to home building, bringing factory precision to an industry that has historically been fragmented and inefficient. Again, the focus isn't disruption for its own sake, it's execution. Practical innovation aimed at solving real problems. Another perspective on the future of leadership came from global executive search leader Jay Rosenzweig in episode 7. Jay works with organizations around the world advising on talent strategy. And he talked about how the next generation of leaders is thinking very differently about work. Purpose matters more. Values matter more. And increasingly, talented people want to know that the organizations they join are building something meaningful, not just profitable.
The future of work and the future of talent is something that's on everybody's mind, and technology is at the heart of a lot of these changes. So the future of work is really the future of skills. It's a future of trust and speed, actually. So AI is taking tasks off of people's plates, but companies still need judgment. They still need creativity. They need ethics. They need leadership. And the best talent today wants two things. They want purpose. I see that more and more. The other one is autonomy, more than ever. The best companies understand that culture has to be designed intentionally. Flexibility is table stakes at this stage. What really matters is clarity, alignment, and having great leaders.
And as a Canadian business leader who works with companies all over the world, he did say it's an interesting time for Canadians. Because of the global landscape, there is a question as to whether or not Canadian leaders may just want to be more focused on building from Canada. And I see a real opportunity in that. All of this points to a larger insight. Canada does not lack innovation, but innovation does not succeed on talent alone. It also depends on the systems around it. Innovation does not happen in isolation. Momentum doesn't happen in isolation. These things happen inside systems. The rules, the infrastructure, the incentives that shape how ideas grow. When I spoke with Trevor Koot, CEO of the BC Real Estate Association, all the way back in episode 1, he highlighted how important data infrastructure is to Canada's housing system.
I always come back to data. The reality in a technology environment is that most of the technology that we use and rely on is actually kind of useless without data behind it and to support it. If we talk about the supportive housing environment, there's opportunity for data to start playing a role in better informing all of the myriad stakeholders that are involved in supportive housing or homelessness or healthcare, mental health, to better inform them in real time. But we don't do a good enough job, and we, the royal we, collectively, of exploring where there's opportunities to get new data to make better decisions and more informed decisions. And so that's the lens that I take as well, pivoting a little bit to the real estate sector and realtors. All of a sudden, as decisions are being made, we've got 30 years of real estate information in the MLS systems across Canada that can start to inform some of those decisions.
Without reliable, integrated, and accessible data, it becomes extremely difficult for governments, companies, or even researchers to design effective solutions. Data, in that sense, becomes a form of national infrastructure. And when I spoke with the tech and real estate leader, Ross McCredie, in episode 2, he introduced another concept, stewardship, thinking beyond short-term transactions and asking how we build systems that create value over decades. And in episode 14, governance expert Darlene Hyde talks about the role governance plays when leaders are navigating uncertainty. Governance is not just bureaucracy. It's a framework for making better decisions, especially when the future is not clear.
It is the point of leverage where you can make huge changes in an organization. You can make changes in products and services. You can make changes in employees' productivity and happiness. You can make changes in stakeholder satisfaction, in customer satisfaction. Often I have found when there are problems in an organization, you don't go down, you go up. Usually the source of the problem has been at the top or very near the top. So I think an organization, the governance of an organization, and certainly the senior executive team are the place where if you can make good changes, that can ripple out to better organizations, better societies, and better countries.
And right now, the future is changing quickly. AI, technology, digital infrastructure, climate, geopolitical unpredictability. Entire industries evolving at an incredible and unprecedented speed. Which means the real question isn't just what technologies we invent. It's whether the systems around those technologies are strong enough to guide them responsibly and competitively. And that's really the spirit behind Canada Now. This show isn't just about highlighting interesting founders or companies or leaders. It's about asking a bigger question. What kind of country are we building right now? Over 16 conversations, one thing became clear. Canada has extraordinary builders, people solving real problems, people thinking deeply about trust, community, and long-term impact. The opportunity ahead isn't just celebrating those builders. It's connecting them, strengthening the ecosystems around them, and telling the stories that help Canadians understand what's possible when those systems work well. Because the future of a country isn't built by one company or one idea. It's built by networks of people, people who trust each other, people who support each other, people who build systems where great ideas can grow. And that's exactly the conversation we'll keep exploring here on Canada Now. And if you've been enjoying these conversations, the best way to support the show is pretty simple. Subscribe to Canada Now wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. It helps more people discover the show. And if an episode resonated with you, please share it with someone building something interesting in Canada. Because conversations like these grow the same way ecosystems do, through people sharing ideas with each other. All right, Canada, now let's do this.